She's like, no, you don't understand. This is an Adonis. I've never seen a man so beautiful. The cover is so pretty. It was disappointing that the book wasn't quite as pretty inside as it was on the outside. So, Shauna Robinson, I think I'm going to just keep reading everything you write. Hey friends, it's Sarah, and in the spirit of Black History Month and Valentine's Day, today I want to recommend you some romance books that feature Black characters and are written by Black authors. So, like I said, February is, of course, the month in which Valentine's Day falls. And so I like to read romance books around this time of year. But it is also, and more importantly, Black History Month. So obviously, we should all be reading books by Black authors featuring Black characters throughout the year, not just in February. But I think it is a good opportunity to really spotlight and highlight books by Black authors during this month. I thought I would combine the romance of Valentine's Day with the importance of highlighting Black authors and recommend to you some Black romances that I've been reading recently. So last year I did a video where I talked about some like nonfiction and fiction books that kind of dealt with like heavier themes for Black History Month, and I think those books are super important to read during this time. It is Black History Month, so actually learning about Black issues and anti-racism and all that is important. I just also wanted to highlight some of the lighter aspects because we shouldn't only be consuming books that are about Black pain and suffering, but also reading ones that showcase Black joy. Of course, it is also important to be following Black creators as they are the ones who are living these experiences. I am very white and do not have these experiences, so go give them a follow. I'll leave a few of my favorites down in the description. They put out great content all year round and just have excellent recommendations. Okay, now let us get into the books. So the first book I have is Better Than Fiction by Alexa Martin. I'm not gonna lie, I picked this one up because this is the most beautiful like romance drawn cover I have ever seen. It is just an absolutely gorgeous style. But basically, this is an adult romance. It follows Drew, who inherits a bookstore from her grandmother when she passes away, and Drew is not a reader, so she really struggles with this. She had to give up her passion of becoming a photographer in order to run this store when her grandma died, and she ends up meeting this kind of famous romance author named Jasper. There's like a book club of like older ladies who kind of try and set them up, which is they're really funny. So Jasper's in town because he is going to be writing a book set in Colorado where they are, and he's like trying to get a feel for the place and do research for his book. So the Dirty Birds book club, as they're called, say that Drew will help him like take him around Colorado. He's like, wow, that's so nice of you to like take me around and show me your hometown, and in return I will give you a book bucket list so that you will enjoy reading again. Which is nice, except she doesn't like reading, so like now you've just given her 2 chores to do. So that part of the plot is like a little odd, because I'm like, this isn't to her, I mean it's to her benefit, but like this isn't something she wants to do, where she's like, I don't have time to read. She's like, I hate reading, and he's like, here, read these books. So that was kind of an odd choice, I thought. So the romance in this is really based on like insta love and just attraction. Like she's like, he's the most handsome man I've ever seen, and you're like, that's nice. She's like, no, you don't understand. This is an Adonis. I've never seen a man so beautiful, jaw dropping, no one can talk around him, model material. And I'm not sure what else there was. He was just really hot apparently. So that was kind of I think I forgot to say this, but I did give this 3 stars. It just wasn't quite what I wanted from this book, but it was still fairly fun. Did have a kind of rough third act breakup though. I know that's kind of like the formula for romance novels, but this one was really rough. A lot of times it's not really necessary, and this one was really rough. But what I did really like about this was, of course, the bookshop, the Dirty Birds, and the kind of exploration of Drew's grief over losing her grandma and her like strained relationship with her family members. And I thought it had a really interesting theme of like, how do you honor the departed's wishes? Like, does she have to give up on her dreams in order to run this bookshop because that was what her grandma loved? How do you balance those things with like, they're dead, but you want to honor them, but also like, you're still alive and you want to live your life not in service to a dead person all the time. So I thought that was quite interesting. So it was nice that it had a little bit more depth than some romances do. Not all of the drama hinged around the relationship, which was nice. Solid 3 stars. The cover is so pretty. It was disappointing that the book wasn't quite as pretty inside as it was on the outside. Okay, up next is Fake It Till You Bake It by Jamie Wesley. I gave this one 3.5 stars. This was another adult romance, and it follows Jada, who was on a reality TV show, kind of like The Bachelor style, and she ended up turning down the proposal at the end, which has now made her like the most hated woman in America, basically. And then Donovan, who is a football player who has opened up a cupcake shop and is trying to like make that work. It says he's like a current football player, but then he's not playing football when we see him, so I don't know if it's the off season. Really not sure how sports work. I know only about hockey, so maybe it was the football off season that this took place in, because he never plays football in it. At first I thought it was like maybe he had retired from football and was doing this, but no, he still like plays for the team. They talk about negotiating his contract and stuff, so I guess it's just the off season. Anyways, so basically she ends up working at the cupcake shop for him, and they are mistaken for a couple because Jada says when she rejects a proposal on live TV that there's someone back home that she was into. People see them together and are like, this is the man that she had back home that's the reason why she said no to the proposal. And so she just kind of is like, yes, this is the man. I'm in love with him. We're together. And Donovan ends up going along with it. So they are doing a fake dating thing in order to salvage her reputation and then also generate buzz for this cupcake shop that is kind of not doing so hot. And of course, because it's a romance, they fall for each other. The fake dating gives way to actual dating. This is like a little bit steamy. I really did like that Jada has dyslexia and she's like pretty open about it, and the way that she talks about it and kind of tries to like bring it into light and make it something to not be ashamed of. I really enjoyed. Overall, it's a fairly cute, like almost enemies to lovers, and some good fake dating, so I quite enjoyed it. Okay, up next we have Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. This is her first YA novel, and it is a romance, of course. I did try and read Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert, and I found it too spicy for me. So I was like, maybe I will try YA Talia Hibbert because I've heard so many good things about her books, but I just think they're a little too graphic for me, a little too explicit. And I really like this book. I gave it 4 stars. Basically, this follows like 2 ex-best friends who end up on this wilderness kind of camping trip almost. There's like 2 of them, and it's in order to get like a scholarship. They go on this like wilderness trip. They're evaluated on their assorted skills like leadership and teamwork and all that sort of stuff, and then the person who scores the highest at the end of the 2 trips gets a scholarship. I can really see why people love Talia Hibbert's writing. I really enjoyed it. She writes excellent banter, good chemistry between the characters. I thought it was very realistic the way that these 2 used to be best friends in like elementary school, and then as they kind of grew apart, and it was kind of like both of their faults, but like no one's fault at the same time, of just that like really awkward period of like 13, 14 growing up trying to figure out who you are, and the way that friendships can kind of fracture then. And so I thought it was very realistic. They were very mature when they eventually managed to talk about it, but it didn't feel like, why are these 17-year-olds so mature? It just felt like, I don't know, it felt really realistic. I really liked these 2. As you can see, I've got lots of tabs in it because I quite enjoyed it. And the romance scenes were just so lovely as well. It's still like very sweet and like very funny without being ridiculous or like cringeworthy. So if she ever writes any more YA books, I will immediately pick them up because this was excellent. I might even give another one of the Brown sisters books a try if one of them's less spicy than the others. I don't know. If you've read them, let me know which is the least spicy. Maybe I'll give that one a try again because I really did enjoy her writing. It was so cute. Then I read The Davenports by Krystal Marquis. This is another YA book, but this is more of a historical fiction romance. So this follows the Davenports and associated people. It follows 4 girls who are kind of growing up in the Gilded Age in Chicago, and the Davenports are a wealthy Black family who kind of made their fortune because the dad designed like some carriages, and so they have this entrance into the upper echelons of society that most Black people don't. So it follows the 2 Davenport daughters. their maid who was like a friend who grew up with them and ended up being their maid, and then like a friend from another wealthier family. And it's just a really good historical fiction romance. It's the first of a series, and it follows like the 4 plots throughout the story, so you get 4 different stories kind of in one. This is, I believe, also her debut novel, so like there were a couple, not issues, but there were a couple little things that could be smoothed out, but it's a debut, so I think with more books it'll get even better. But basically, all of these 4 young women are struggling with their place in society. They're falling for people that they shouldn't be, and they want more than what life has given them. So you have the older sister, Olivia, who is like, I gotta find myself a husband, and then kind of falls in with the civil rights movement and starts to think that maybe she can use her position of privilege and wealth to do more. You have the younger sister, Helen, who really just wants to work on cars. Like, cars are the new thing, and she's like, I want to work for my father's company and like be a mechanic, but she's a girl, so she's not allowed to do that. And she falls for someone she shouldn't as well. Then you have Amy Rose, who is the maid who's saving up money so that she can buy her own salon to sell hair care products and like be a salon for Black women, and she is in love with the Davenports' son. And then you have Ruby, who is also in love with the Davenports' son, and their family has fallen on hard times, so she loves him, but she's also trying to get money and status for her family again. So it's sort of a match of convenience that she's hoping to form, as well as like a love match. And so she kind of flirts with someone else in order to get the Davenport son's attention. You can see how that would be a sticky situation. I think at times the pacing in this struggled a little bit, where it felt like we were doing the same thing over and over in different chapters. But I still really enjoyed it. I gave this a 3.5 stars. I will definitely be reading the second one because this one kind of leaves off on a bit of a cliffhanger for some of the characters. So I want to see what happens to them next. But I did really fall in love with all these young women and their struggles, and I was just rooting for them the whole time. Up next was The Passing Playbook by Isaac Fitzsimons. This is another YA contemporary book, and this one was also 4 stars. This is about what's his name? I don't know anyone's name in these books. In any book. I've never known a character's name ever in my life except for Jane Sue, because this is one last stop supremacy. Okay, so this follows Spencer, who is a trans boy who just had to transfer schools because of threats of violence against him at his last school. And he is just trying to like fit in. He wants to pass as cisgendered. He doesn't want anyone to know that he's trans, and so he's trying to kind of fly under the radar, but he loves soccer, and so he's trying to also join the boys' soccer team because that's like his passion, even though his parents are like not so sure. They're like, I don't know if it's going to be safe for you. And then he ends up starting to fall for a boy on his team who turns out to be from a very Christian family, and they have some very problematic and scary views on things. But despite that, this was still like a very lovely, sweet romance between these boys. There were at times discussions around the heavier topics like the homophobia of the family, the Christianity, trying to like decide between like your family and your morals, especially when you're a teenager and you live at home. So I thought that was handled really well. I loved the romance between them. It was such a quick paced read in like a good way. I just flew through this one. I loved it so much, and I was just rooting for these 2 boys. There are discussions around issues that Spencer faces because he's trans and obstacles that he has to kind of bump up against and overcome. But I thought the author did a really good job of kind of balancing that out with the sweeter, lighter romance in this. And it was just a very lovely story, kind of coming of age and falling in love. I really loved this one. It was very lovely. Then up next, I read Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson. This is an adult literary fiction book, so not really exactly a romance, but like the main theme is falling in love. It's a real thin baby, so if you need a quick read, it's just over 100 pages. This one I feel like has been kind of everywhere recently. I've seen a lot of people read it and recommend it, and I can totally see why. It has very beautiful writing. It's written in second person, so it's, you did this, you did that, and it talks about this like relationship between these 2 people of like meeting someone and feeling that instant attraction, but like not being able to be with them, and then becoming friends and then lovers. And just this kind of really like heady romance attraction. It also like references a lot of like black art and music and film, and it talks a lot about being a black man in, I think this is set in the UK, but it talks about like police brutality and like losing people that and like watching them get arrested or brutalized by the police. It like starts off as like, this relationship where it's very like heady and it feels very, I don't know, like a hot summer's day, kind of that like hazy feeling. But then towards the end of the book, it progresses into these more like social issues and like what is it to be a black man, and the struggles of like opening yourself up and being vulnerable with this person that you love when you can barely really explain yourself to yourself. It's very beautifully written. It's really heartbreaking at the end. Yeah, it was just really good. I gave this 4 stars. So then I have The Sweetest Remedy by Jane Igharo, and this is an adult contemporary novel. I gave it 4 stars. It follows Hannah, who is half white and half Nigerian, and her mother and father. Basically, like, he had an affair with her mother. She didn't realize that. And then he was like, okay, bye, I gotta go back to my family in Nigeria. And she was like, what do you mean family in Nigeria? And he's been out of their lives ever since, but he died, and one of his last wishes was for Hannah to go back to Nigeria to meet her like half siblings and like see his home and everything. So she packs up and goes back to Nigeria to find out about her dad and like her roots and connect to her culture. And she gets there and finds out that her siblings did not know about her and like didn't know she was coming there at all, so she kind of accidentally blindsides them. It's really like The Lawyer who blindsides everyone, but then she's slowly kind of being embraced into the family and shown different aspects of her Nigerian heritage that she had never experienced before. And it was really kind of a coming into yourself, a discovering of your roots story with some romance as well, because she ends up falling for this guy who was kind of raised by her father. They have this kind of like opposite relationship to her dad. Like, she didn't know him at all, but he's her birth father, whereas the love interest, Lawrence, is not related by blood at all, but was raised almost like a son by the father. So it's a really interesting dichotomy there. I really loved all of the sibling interactions. The exploration of Nigerian culture was so beautiful and like lush, and I wanted to try Nigerian food so bad. Like, I'm super picky eater, but the way that they describe Nigerian food in this sounds so delicious, so I might have to try and track some down at some point. I did find the romance in this was a little scattered at times. I was much more invested in Hannah's growth and her discovering of her culture and connecting with her family and those bonds than I was in the romance. It was still good. It was still sweet. But I was much more invested in Hannah's growth as a character than in her relationship with Lawrence. And I also found that sometimes Hannah kind of just like got over her negative emotions a little too quickly. Like, she was like, I'm upset. Anyways, okay, we're good now. I did love watching Hannah grow a bit of a backbone towards the end of the book and like stand up for herself and her place in the family. So I really like this. I think the writing just really did it for me. I love a good kind of coming of age, discovering who you are, identity themes in a book, so this one really worked for me, and I do really want to read her other book. And the author is Nigerian and Canadian, so that's really cool as well. Last one, I just finished reading this one, is The Banned Bookshop of Maggie Banks by Shauna Robinson. This one's not really romance, it is an adult contemporary, but I really enjoyed this. I gave this 4 stars as well, and it follows Maggie Banks, obviously, who is kind of in her late 20s and is feeling a little lost. She doesn't have much of a direction in her life. She's like, everyone seems to know what they want to do. They've got careers. I hop from job to job, and I don't know what I really want to do with my life. But her friend is about to go on mat leave, and she's like, hey, can you come run my bookstore for me while I give birth and have a whole child? And so Maggie's like, sure, I don't have anything going on, why not? And she ends up moving temporarily to this small town that's kind of based around this famous author who like wrote his big book there. And so there's like a museum and stuff, and the guy's grandson or great-grandson, some descendant of some sort, kind of like runs the society for like the preservation of things relating to this author guy. And so the bookshop that Maggie ends up running and working at is only allowed to sell the author's books and then books that were written in his lifetime or that were around that he could have read. So stuff from like 1930s and earlier, which means a lot of like really white books and old men and all that sort of stuff. And Maggie's like, this is not enough. She decides to secretly start selling more contemporary books that people will actually buy, because it's only the tourists who come in to buy like the famous authors' books, and then the locals are like, we don't want to read the classics, we've read them. So she starts kind of like a black market of like newer books and starts setting up cool literary events. And yeah, it's great. I really love this. There's a bit of a romance between her and an employee of like the author's grandson. And they're kind of obviously at odds. They have almost complete opposite goals in their careers, but they did a similar thing to Better Than Fiction, where she gives him tasks to do and he gives her books to read. But I feel like this one worked better because they were both doing things they weren't as comfortable with. So Maggie's not a huge reader, and he's like recommending her books to read, and he is kind of a bit of a hermit and stuck in his ways. So she gives him things to do outside of his comfort zone, like go to a paint night or whatever. So I thought this was just a really good, again, like coming of age, almost like coming into yourself, figuring out who you are, figuring out your path, what you want to do with your life. And then it had a nice little romance as well. Again, like I think the romance was lovely, but my investment was really in Maggie's growth, in her bonds with the people in the town, in her like events that she's running. And I just loved watching her figure herself out. And she made some mistakes along the way, but I didn't feel that they were cringeworthy. Like I could buy into every decision she made, even though I was like, oh, this is going to come back and like bite you in the butt later, but I don't see what else you could possibly do. So yeah, I really like this. I also read the author's other book. So Shauna Robinson, I think I'm going to just keep reading everything you write. I did read Must Love Books by Shauna Robinson as well. I liked this one a lot as well. It deals with a woman in the publishing industry who is like way overworked. She works for one publisher where she's not really working with the kind of books that she wants. And they also are like giving her pay cuts. And she's like, I can't afford to live anymore. It sounds relatable. And she ends up working freelance for a rival publisher. And she's like kind of juggling these. And her main publisher is trying to like get this author to re-sign with them, and so she's also trying to get him to do that, and then they start to have a little like romance going on, and it's really cute. But yeah, just really good. This one, I feel like the romance was better in this one than in Maggie Banks, but the decisions made in this one were also a little more horrifying. So a little messier, but better romance, a little more reasonable decisions, but the romance was toned down a little bit. Excellent books. I think Shauna Robinson might be a new favorite author. I'm a sucker for a bookish romance, and I really like her writing style. And they have a good, like, they're not romances, you know, they're like kind of coming of age contemporary books. I keep saying coming of age, and I don't think that's quite right, because these are like women in their 30s, so they're not like 18 and like, what do I do with my life? But they are like uncertain about their paths forward and like what their futures will look like. So this is exactly my kind of book. So Shauna Robinson, I think it's gonna be an auto-buy author, which is very exciting for me. I feel like I haven't found one of those in a while. So this ended up being more than like just romances, but all of these books do feature an element of romance in them. So it's still in the Valentine's Day Black History Month theme. Okay, so those are the 9 books that I wanted to talk about for Valentine's Day as well as Black History Month. Let me know if you've read any of them. Let me know what your favorite romances by Black authors are, because I am still trying to read more romances that are not written by white people, because there's a lot of those. And we just want to, you always want to diversify your reading. You always want to read from more perspectives, more points of view, more lived experiences. So this is me trying to do that. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you next time. Now go read a book. She ends up working at the Just yoinked that right out of my hand. Good. Oh, what the heck? I'll talk about this one as well. Treat yourself, girl. That's all, folks. I know that's a good question.